Chapter 2. Weakness can be turned into hatred. I made the biggest mistake of my young life on November 9th, 1938. After I graduated, I took a job making precision medical instruments and remained in Tuttlingen for several months. It was my parents' 20th wedding anniversary, and I resolved to surprise them with a visit. I bought myself a ticket and made the 9-hour train trip to the city where I was born. Outside the window, the fields and forests of Germany rolled by. In the sheltered confines of the school, I'd had no access to newspapers or radio. I had no idea what had been happening to the country I loved so much, or about the growing cloud of anti-Semitism that had settled over the land. I arrived home and found the house dark and locked up. My family had vanished. I wasn't to know that they had gone into hiding, believing that I was safe and far away. I still had my key, otherwise I would have had to sleep in the gutter. I opened my door, and there was my dachshund, Lulu. She immediately jumped up and licked my legs. She was happy, and so was I. I was very worried about my family. It did not make sense to me that they would be gone in the middle of the night. But I was very tired and in my childhood bed after 5 years away. It did not seem possible that anything bad could happen to me there. I lay awake, listening to far-off noises in the street. I had no idea what was happening, that across the city, synagogues were burning. Eventually, exhausted, I fell asleep. I awoke at 5 a.m. to the sound of the door being kicked. 10 Nazis broke in, dragged me from bed and, I swear to you, they beat me half to death. My pajamas were soon soaked with my blood. One took his bayonet, cut off my sleeve, and started to engrave a swastika in my arm. As he started cutting, my little dog Lulu jumped on him. I don't know if she bit him or just scared him, but the Nazi let me go and then, using the bayonet at the end of his rifle, stabbed and killed my poor little dog, shouting, "Ein Judenhund," Jewish dog. I thought, Eddie, this is your last day. Today, you're going to die. But they were not there to kill me, only to beat and humiliate me. After their first attack, they dragged me into the street and made me witness the destruction of our 200-year-old house, the home generations of my family had been raised in. In that moment, I lost my dignity, my freedom, and my faith in humanity. I lost everything I lived for. I was reduced from a man to being nothing. That night is now infamous as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, named for the shattered shards that littered the streets after Jewish-owned stores, homes, and synagogues were looted and destroyed by the Brownshirts, the Nazi paramilitary force. The German authorities did nothing to stop it. That night, atrocities were being committed by civilized Germans all over Leipzig, all over the country. Nearly every Jewish home and business in my city was vandalized, burned, or otherwise destroyed, as were our synagogues, as were our people. It wasn't just Nazi soldiers and fascist thugs who turned against us. Ordinary citizens, our friends and neighbors since before I was born, joined in the violence and the looting. When the mob was done destroying property, they rounded up Jewish people, many of them young children, and threw them into the river that I used to skate on as a child. The ice was thin and the water freezing. Men and women I'd grown up with stood on the riverbanks, spitting and jeering as people struggled. "Shoot them," they cried. "Shoot the Jewish dogs." What had happened to my German friends that they became murderers? How is it possible to create enemies from friends, to create such hate? Where was the Germany I had been so proud to be a part of, the country where I was born, the country of my ancestors? One day we were friends, neighbors, colleagues, and the next we were told we were sworn enemies. When I think of those Germans relishing our pain, I want to ask them, have you got a soul? Have you got a heart? It was madness, in the true sense of the word. Otherwise, civilized people lost all ability to tell right from wrong. They committed terrible atrocities, and worse, they enjoyed it. They thought they were doing the right thing, and even those who could not fool themselves that we Jews were the enemy did nothing to stop the mob. If enough people had stood up then, on Kristallnacht, and said, "Enough! What are you doing? What is wrong with you?" then the course of history would have been different. But they did not. They were scared. They were weak. And their weakness allowed them to be manipulated into hatred. As they loaded me onto a truck to take me away, blood mixing with the tears on my face, I stopped being proud to be German. Never again.